Continuing with the endocrine system, remember how in the digestive system you had all those damn secretions you had to keep track of? Well, same game, different day. Now you have to keep track of the hormones, and there are a bunch of them. But let me say that the least effective way to do it would be to make a big alphabetical list of all the hormones and try to memorize them. The more effective way to do it is to note that there are relationships between hormones, all right? Let's start looking at those. Memory is often helped by having a structural framework to use to keep things straight in your memory. Let's start looking at that. So we have here hypothalamic hormones, which are all either releasing hormones or inhibiting hormones. Releasing or inhibiting what? The pituitary. So hypothalamic releasing hormones tell the pituitary to release pituitary hormones. Hypothalamic inhibiting hormones tell the pituitary don't release those hormones. Okay? So hypothalamic hormones, let's start taking a look at them. Thyrotropin releasing hormone. RH stands for releasing hormone. Thyro because it's the thyroid gland. Fortunately, a lot of the hormones have in their name a root word that tells you what's going on. This is a thyroid-related hormone. Tropin comes from a Greek root word meaning to turn or to change or to adapt. It's like flowers sometimes exhibit what's called a phototropism. They turn to face the sun as the sun moves across the sky. So thyrotropin is going to turn the thyroid gland ultimately. In other words, it's going to cause the thyroid gland to do something, okay? CRH, corticotropin releasing hormone. Cortico, Greek root word cortex, the bark of a tree. Now here we're not talking about the cerebral cortex. Remember what endocrine gland has a cortex? That's right, the adrenal gland, the adrenal cortex. So CRH is going to be a hypothalamic hormone that ultimately has an impact on the adrenal cortex. See, the name gives you a lot of information. GnRH, gonadotropin releasing hormone. Again, notice how these are tropic hormones. They're ultimately having effects on other glands. The gonads, of course, the testes and the ovaries. Prolactin releasing hormone. Look at the name prolactin. Lactin, lactose, lactate, milk. Pro for produce or promote. What does prolactin do? It promotes the production of milk. See, the names tell you. But again, this is a hypothalamic hormone. It doesn't do that directly. It's going to tell other glands to do that. All right, we'll see. There's a chain of command here. PIH, prolactin inhibiting hormone, that is the opposite of PRH. It says don't release prolactin. Okay. PIH, by the way, is also what we've been calling dopamine. I think it turned out that there were people like studying neurotransmitters and people studying hormones who for a long time thought they were each studying something unique, and then it turned out that they were studying the same thing. So again, endocrine secretions, hormones, powerful effects in many parts of the body. GHRH, growth hormone releasing hormone. In other words, this is going to promote the release of growth hormone. And GHIH, just the opposite. It inhibits the release of growth hormone. This is what we've seen before, and we called it somatostatin. Again, these endocrine secretions, very powerful, and they show up in different parts of the body as well. They were even given different names. People may not have realized they were studying the same thing for a long time. So hypothalamic hormones travel in the portal system from the hypothalamus to the anterior pituitary, okay? So the portal system, again, like we saw the hepatic portal vein, these are blood vessels that travel from the hypothalamus down to the anterior pituitary. You can see it there in the diagram on the left. This is how the hypothalamic hormones will get down to the anterior pituitary to tell the anterior pituitary what to do. And then pituitary hormones are going to be secreted by the anterior pituitary. There are both anterior and posterior pituitary hormones, so you have to keep those straight. Anterior pituitary hormones are released only under the direct stimulation of the hypothalamic releasing hormones, or they're inhibited by the inhibiting hormones. Let's do a quick mini quiz. Can you tell me what all of the hypothalamic hormones had in common without looking at the previous slide? All right, go ahead and look. Fine. Come back. Notice they all have either RH or IH in their names. They're all either releasing hormones or inhibiting hormones. That's the easy way to spot the hypothalamic hormones. They all have either RH or IH in their names, all right? See, these are the tricks, these are the powerful tools to help you keep it all straight. So let's now look specifically at the anterior pituitary, which is where all those releasing or inhibiting hormones were going, okay? So, whereas the hormones we saw before were synthesized in the hypothalamus, the anterior pituitary hormones are synthesized in the anterior pituitary itself. These are not hypothalamic hormones, they're made in the anterior pituitary, which, remember, is a gland, okay? They're tropic hormones. We say that because they cause other endocrine glands to release their own hormones. In other words, they turn or change other endocrine glands. So the gonadotropins are going to target the gonads, okay? Two gonadotropins from the anterior pituitary. First is follicle stimulating hormone. Now again, there's so many hormones that you have to keep track of. Look for as many tricks as you can, all right? In this case, look at follicle. When you see follicle, think sperm for males, eggs for females. So what does follicle stimulating hormone do? Ultimately, it's going to be involved in the production of sperm or the maturation of the egg. See? So easy. The name tells you what's happening. Then there's luteinizing hormone. This root word lutein, yellow, all right? And that's what we're going to see later in a temporary endocrine organ called the corpus luteum. Luteinizing hormone, the way to think about this is the hormone of ovulation. This is the hormone that will stimulate the release of the egg, okay? So gonadotropins, all right? They're affecting the gonads, the testes and the ovaries. The ovaries are the ones that develop the egg and then release it. The testes are the ones that make sperm. So see, they fit together. The names tell you a lot. There's a natural link between these. Thyroid stimulating hormone. By the way, let's back up just a section. Gonadotropins, all right, these are from the anterior pituitary. Do you remember what hypothalamic hormone would cause the release of these? Think about it. Look back if you need to. Yeah, gonadotropin releasing hormone. So when GnRH, gonadotropin releasing hormone, is released by the hypothalamus, that will cause the anterior pituitary to release follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Keep the connections in mind. It's the linkages. That's what's going to help you organize it in your head so you'll remember. So now let's look. Anterior pituitary, thyroid stimulating hormone. What hormone was it in the hypothalamus that's going to tell the anterior pituitary to release TSH? That's right, TRH. Thyrotropin releasing hormone will come from the hypothalamus and tell the anterior pituitary to release thyroid stimulating hormone. And what endocrine gland do you think thyroid stimulating hormone is going to have an effect on? Right. Who's big and red? What's big and red and eats rocks? A big red rock eater. What do George Washington, Martin Luther King, Christopher Columbus have in common? They're all born on holidays, okay? So thyroid stimulating hormone will go to the thyroid and tell it to release thyroid hormone. See, the links are there. ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone. Oh my God, could they make this any easier? Where is this going to go? To the adrenal cortex, and it's going to tell the adrenal cortex to release hormones. And which hypothalamic hormone was it that's going to cause the anterior pituitary to release ACTH? Yes, that would be CRH, corticotropin releasing hormone. CRH stimulates ACTH, the release of ACTH, okay? Again, the connection, the adrenal cortex is the link. Prolactin, to produce milk. Targets the mammary gland and the testes. We'll see later exactly what effects it has in the testes. Growth hormone targets basically everything. Growth hormone, you've got to stimulate growth throughout the body. So what are we going to do? Well, remember, the liver makes all those plasma proteins. Bones need to grow, muscle grows, fat grows. So growth hormone is an incredibly powerful hormone that goes everywhere in your body. Stimulates not just growth, but repair. That's why the athletes used it to cheat. Because, you're playing sports hard every day, professional sports, you're always getting little, tears in your muscles and tendons and ligaments and so on. And boy, that growth hormone helps you fix things up in a hurry. Very big head bonds. So, anterior lobe, look at what we call the axes, all right? Let's look at what's going on here. Axes, way to organize. So this is a relationship between the pituitary and our more remote, the hypothalamus, pituitary, and our more remote endocrine gland. So 3 axes, we see the HPT axis, the hypothalamo-pituitary-thyroid axis. This is connecting the hypothalamus with the pituitary with the thyroid. So the hypothalamic hormone, TRH, the anterior pituitary hormone, TSH, and what hormone is actually going to come from the thyroid then? Yeah, thyroid hormone. See, a natural chain of command. The HPA axis, the hypothalamo-pituitary-adrenal axis. CRH, corticotropin releasing hormone from the hypothalamus, tells the anterior pituitary to release ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone. And where is that going to go? Going to go to the adrenal cortex and cause the release of salt, sugar, sex, aldosterone, cortisol, and the precursors of estrogen and testosterone. And the HPG, the hypothalamo-pituitary gonadal. So GnRH from the hypothalamus tells the anterior pituitary to release FSH and LH, follicle-stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone. And what's going to happen then when we get to the gonads? We're going to have the estrogens and the testosterone, okay? So again, link them together. That's a very powerful way. Then notice prolactin goes to the mammary glands. Growth hormone goes everywhere and promotes growth. All right. So I know at first it seems overwhelming when you see all these hormone names, but really they're so logically connected. They're connected in terms of function and in terms of root words and stuff. Take advantage of that. Make your life simpler, okay? That's the anterior pituitary. Let's switch over to the posterior, which remember is really just an extension of the hypothalamus. This is neural tissue. So there aren't any hormones that come really from the posterior pituitary. These are hormones from the hypothalamus that are simply released by the posterior pituitary. It doesn't make its own hormones, okay? The 2 big ones are oxytocin and antidiuretic hormone. And we've seen ADH before many times. Oxytocin, this might be the first time. In any case, they're synthesized in the hypothalamus. They're transported by the hypothalamo-hypophyseal tract to the posterior lobe. So remember, for the anterior pituitary, we had the portal system because those were hormones traveling through the blood from the hypothalamus down to the anterior pituitary. In this case, blood vessels are not involved. This is a neural tract. So you can see on the right-hand side there, we've got these neural tracts that simply transport the hormones from the hypothalamus to the posterior pituitary, where they are then released. These hormones are actually made in the hypothalamus. Keep that straight. That's unlike the anterior pituitary. Let's start taking a look at the anterior pituitary hormones and specifically what they do, okay? FSH by the gonadotrope cells, that's unimportant, I won't ask you that. Stimulates production of egg or sperm cells, like I told you before. Think of follicle as meaning sperm in males, eggs in females. Luteinizing hormone mainly stimulates hormone production. In females, it's going to stimulate ovulation and the corpus luteum to secrete progesterone and estrogen. So I mentioned before the corpus luteum. That's what's going to happen to the follicle after ovulation. There's basically a package of nutrients that the egg is surrounded by. And once the egg is released, that's ovulation, this package of nutrients becomes the corpus luteum, literally the yellow body. It then goes on to secrete progesterone and estrogen. Whereas in males, luteinizing hormone stimulates the interstitial cells of the testes to secrete testosterone. So again, think of LH as the hormone of ovulation, like I told you before. Also, you can think of it as stimulating hormone production. So notice the two gonadotropin hormones here. FSH has to do with eggs and sperm. LH has to do with sex hormones. Progesterone, estrogen, testosterone. Okay. TSH, thyrotrope cells, that's not a critical term, but you know, what the heck. Stimulates growth of the gland and secretion of thyroid hormone. So, once again, this chain of command. Thyrotropin releasing hormone in the hypothalamus causes anterior pituitary to release thyroid stimulating hormone, which goes to the thyroid and causes the release of thyroid hormone. All right? They've all got thyroid in their names. ACTH, coming from corticotrope cells, not critical as far as I'm concerned. This regulates the stress response, as it's called. Also stimulates the adrenal cortex. So corticosteroids are what regulate glucose, fat, and protein metabolism. All right. So the corticosteroids, aldosterone and cortisol, and then the sex hormones as well. Those are all steroid hormones. They regulate a lot of things in the body, and we'll talk a lot more about those coming up, all right? So corticosteroids, why are they called corticosteroids? Because they're steroids that come from the adrenal cortex. See, once again, the name tells you exactly what's going on. Prolactin secreted by the lactotrope cells, again, not a critical term. In females, this is milk synthesis after delivery. So females don't produce milk when they're not pregnant, all right? It's during pregnancy that the mammary glands start to grow, and then prolactin causes them to start making milk. So once that little parasite, once you can squirt that little parasite out, there's milk ready for it to feed on, all right? And in the male, it increases sensitivity to luteinizing hormone, and therefore it increases testosterone secretion, okay? So prolactin, basically, you know, that's it's either the milk or the baby batter, okay? That's what's going on here. Testosterone stimulates the production of the baby batter, okay? So, let's continue with anterior lobe. Growth hormone, the somatotrope cells, holy smoke, tissue growth, yeah, growth hormone, what an incredibly powerful hormone. Stimulates the liver to produce insulin-like growth factors, which are very powerful growth-like hormones. Protein synthesis. Think about it. If you're growing, you're making proteins, right? You're building muscle, you're building bone, you're building organs, you're growing. And remember, all those things are made out of protein. So growth hormone enhances DNA transcription for messenger RNA production, protein synthesis, enhances amino acid transport into cells because proteins are made from amino acids. So see, growth hormone kind of takes care of the whole deal here, you know, from production to delivery. Lipid metabolism stimulates free fatty acids and glycerol release from adipocytes, a protein sparing effect. All right, so what we're going to do is lipolysis here. You should remember that word. We don't want to use proteins for energy. Remember, your body hates to use proteins for energy. We need proteins to make stuff and to regulate all of our internal metabolism. So when we're growing, we want to turn that fat back into energy so that we can use proteins specifically for growing. And carbohydrate metabolism, we have a glucose sparing effect. The idea here is to promote carbohydrate metabolism so that once again we don't have to use we have the lipid metabolism to make plenty of energy there. We want to spare glucose for the brain, all right? So the glucose sparing effect is so that, remember, the brain really wants glucose. We want to make plenty of energy available to other cells so that we don't have to use all the glucose and the brain can use it, okay? And also promotes electrolyte balance, sodium, potassium, chloride retention, calcium absorption, because we're growing, all right? And there you see on the right side, very big head bonds. Growth hormone, following maturation, Remember, the epiphyseal plate's closed. You can't grow in height anymore, but appositional growth is still possible, and therefore bones get bigger in diameter. So Barry Bonds, I think when he first started with the Pittsburgh Pirates, his hat size was like 7 1/4, and it was like over 8 when he finished. We all just watched his head get bigger. It's like, yeah, Barry, we knew what was going on. And today you see all these ads about men out of energy, lost the drive. Yeah, human growth hormone. There are clinics all over the place, basically just hucksters, scam artists, trying to give human growth hormone to old people. Make it like that movie, whatever that was, with Wilford Brimley, Diabetes. I don't remember what that was. So growth hormone aging, childhood, adolescence, promote the development of bone, cartilage, muscle growth, stimulates growth at the epiphyseal plates. In adulthood, osteoblastic activity and appositional growth, okay? Bone thickening, bone strengthening, all right? Because remember, you use your body throughout your life. The bones have to stay strong, so growth hormone promotes the thickness of the bone. That's why very big head bonds. Blood concentration decreases with age, and it's true. It falls off with age. You don't need to grow as much and repair as much as you get older. It's just, it's time to die. Just go away. Levels of growth hormone do fluctuate throughout the day. It's higher during sleep, deep sleep, and after high protein meals, after vigorous exercise, because that's when you're going to need to do growing and repairing, okay? Lower after high carb meals because you've got plenty of energy then. So growth retardation there in the bottom left, dwarfism. And then bottom right, you see pituitary disorders will cause excessive release of growth hormone. And I think you saw that in Bio 201, acromegaly. That's how a lot of the athletes who cheat take growth hormone and they end up looking like they got acromegaly. And then the upright growth hormone cat likes your couch, yes. So switching back to the posterior lobe now, ADH targets the kidneys. We already knew that, all right? Works in the nephron loop. Increases water retention by increasing the number of aquaporin channels. It reduces urine formation, pulls water back into the blood, raises stroke volume, raises blood pressure. That was the whole idea. It was released as part of the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. It also functions as a neurotransmitter in the brain. We're not really going to talk about that. Oxytocin, labor contractions and lactation. So you may know females sometimes, if it's time to, you're dilated and that little parasite, you're trying to squirt that thing out and you can't get it out. Sometimes at the hospital they'll give you a little shot of Pitocin. What's Pitocin? Basically just a synthetic oxytocin. That's going to stimulate labor contractions. Also stimulates lactation as well. So remember, prolactin is for producing milk. Oxytocin is for squirting that milk out because the little parasite's hungry. Got to feed that thing. May have a role in sperm transport. It's sometimes called the cuddle hormone because oxytocin is, like little cats cuddling. Sometimes after you've done the deed and, the guy is like looking at his watch saying, I think I can still catch the fourth quarter. And the women say, no, come back. The cuddle hormone, I don't know. That's, you can think about that more on your own. But yeah, supposedly it stimulates that feeling of, come here, let's cuddle. And remember, when you cuddle alone, you cuddle with Hitler. And you're going like, what the hell? This is a takeoff on a World War II poster. When you ride alone, you ride with Hitler. Back in World War II, that was oh my God, the whole world was at war. And we had troops and we had tanks and airplanes and ships and stuff. And so we needed to save gasoline for all that. So they really wanted to promote ride sharing, car sharing. The idea was that if you're driving by yourself, you're using up gas that our planes and ships and tanks can use. So they had these posters that said, when you ride alone, you ride with Hitler. Yeah. Okay. So here you go. Which of the following is not a hypothalamic hormone? Remember, there is an incredibly easy way to spot the hypothalamic hormones. They all have certain letter combinations. Do you remember? Yes, of course you do. FSH, That's a anterior pituitary hormone. All the rest are hypothalamic hormones. And oh yeah, this is like sounds like Moses in the burning bush or something here, isn't it? This is one of the most remote places I go. This is called the maze. The maze has no pavement anywhere inside, and they discourage people from going to the maze. It's great if you look at the National Park Service website. They kind of go, you probably don't want to go here. It's very, very difficult roads, and there's no pavement. There's no cell phone coverage throughout most of the maze. They tell you when you go in. There is a ranger station that's it's 40 miles from the nearest pavement, and then it's about another 30 miles from where I am right now. They tell you before you go in here that the key word, if you say, what happens if something goes wrong, the term they use is self-rescue. In other words, you on your own, buddy. So that's the Laterite Butte out there. This is one of the most remote places I go. And there's my phone going off. It's probably a neighbor wanting me to come get a rattlesnake. So I guess I better go. I'll see you in the next video.